I can see conceptually one template that frames all myth and religions from antiquity. This is very difficult to see, so difficult that people who study myths and religions do not see it. It takes a certain way of looking at it and interpreting it in order to see that template emerge. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. The reason I'm doing this one is because I got a question from a friend, George, and what George asked was this. He starts out by referencing my overall message. It's a healing journey. This template is a healing journey. The healing journey from a bad incident in life that continues to emerge from triggers that we need to seek and find a way to let go. The electrochemical storage of bad memories to change our attitude and then be able to dissolve it, to forgive and let it go. Okay, so what he's talking about there, is this cyclical pain. We're hanging on to something in our memories that continues to play out. And as long as we hold it that way in our memories, it continues to hold out that way. So the teachings are to change the state of that memory. You can't change the memory. You have to change the way you feel about it. And there are certain processes to do that. That's an easy thing. You can go anywhere in the world, and that's what works. And that's the template. Now, I need to caveat right here. The healing process is very specific, but the ultimate end goal is to continue to go through the healing process repetitively until one reaches a state of inner peace and enlightenment, where we're now living understanding cause and effect and no longer attached and frazzled by the world, but standing back and looking at it from a distance. So it's not just healing, it's healing until you are free from the attachments that you've made in life naturally. We do that naturally. Looking for inner peace? This is the path. The path is the template. The path is not Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism. Those are the religious carrier shells. The pathway among all of them is one human path that is not Hinduism, that's not Judaism, that is not mythological. It is a human, mentally interactive path. My lack of understanding is this. Is there a template like this in all religions? You say there is, because we are human. Pick it up and it is there. So that's what this video is going to be about. And for sure, you're at a special place if you're curious and you want to hear about this. I've reached out over the years as I do this, and I'm digging into it, and have gone to places that are just people that are very expert with this material. Greek myth, I barely know this stuff. There's people that are really into it, and I try to talk to them about the common shared myth, and they just shut down. They're so tired of that. It is hard to see. But what I've done is different. I've studied bunches of things a little bit instead of one thing extensively. Well, the Bible I've studied extensively. Everything else, Buddhism, Taoism, quite a bit. As it gets into Hinduism and then Greek myth, it starts fading off more, but you begin to see that template at any rate. It shows up in Babylonia. I can find that in the Enuma Elish. But there is something that needs to be understood, that all of the stories are conceptual. What that means is that if you were to take like a fable, Tortoise and the Hare, there is a concept in that story that is not the story itself. What we're doing as we interpret this material, look at it very objectively and understand that there is something hidden in there. And if you were to, in this case, it's religious. So people have a tendency to take that surface story and say, this is true. I believe this. And then there's other people that say, no, it's not true. It can't be. And you've got these militant atheists and theists back and forth. Meanwhile, neither one of them are realizing, you know what? It's framed on a template. Why don't you step back, and let's look for that template and see what that does. All right, that's this right here. How do we see it between other myth and religions? If it's really there, how can I read one thing? How can I read this religion, Christianity, Judaism, Genesis, and then go to Greek myth, and you're telling me that the same template is there? How is that? Okay. Let's take a look at that. What I want to suggest is that ultimately from where you are, not knowing how the template works, from being on the outside looking at it, is what you're doing right now. And you're ready to start seeing the commonality. If you can imagine like a radio tower structured up, and off of each facet there's a different world built, and that they're all different from each other. They all are radically different, and they don't even like each other, but they're all framed on that one tower. They have one basic structure. That's what we're looking for, that basic structure within all of those differences. And we're doing it objectively. We have to dismiss our emotions. Now, once The reason I'm going to find that it's easier to show this than it was to find is because now that I know what the template is, what we do is we identify the steps. We know what they are. There's going to be certain things that are happening that we've now identified. Now when you go read his story, you're looking for that. Let's see, there's a person that's isolated up front. There's a special person selected out that's not part of the crowd. Do we see that anywhere? And you know what? Instead of me just describing this, let's go back and look at it again. This is the actual template itself that I'm working with. It is in flux. It's still growing. I'm getting this primarily from Genesis, but days 1 through 7 here is actually the creation days and how it's setting that up with cycles and cause and effect. And in 7 down here, that's the day that we are like Adam and Eve, naked and unashamed, happy in the Garden of Eden, no life experiences to hurt us yet. My earth is inhabited by all inner qualities that are not in conflict, meaning my life experience is pure and not yet judged. I am happy-go-lucky and don't care about anything but my happiness. That ends chapter 2. Then 8 steps up, we begin to judge our qualities. These are actual steps that we begin to judge our qualities of perceived life and start to live life through these judged experiences. This is what first sin represents. That's in other material. That the serpent is a metaphorical representation of now we are living life and judging life. We're not happy anymore. We're seeing things. We have consumed of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Metaphorically, we are now learning about good and bad in the world. And we are making judgment calls, and we are becoming that. This continues on, and where we get to down here now is what we're looking at is the healing sequence for the monomyth. The first myth ends at where the flood needs to happen. That's the life cycle myth, the template. Actually, it's not a myth; it's a template. It's held in a story that is the mythology. But the template itself is the human life cycle. Now, this is when we begin to turn inward. What we're going to be looking for when I say steps along the way, there's going to be an initial isolation of somebody. Not many are destined for this. Moses is in the basket, Jesus to Egypt, Jason to Chiron, etc. There's not always an isolation. Sometimes there's just somebody that's called. They're righteous before God or something like that. That's enough to cover it. That's an initial isolation. Here's somebody that is picked out above other people. Bingo, right there. They've done it. There may be a hidden declaration of cause and effect. It is in Jewish material. That is pretty common. You will find it all over plants growing in season, that sort of thing. There is an element for holding the experience of cyclical pain, the plagues, increasing pain in childbirth, repeated afflictions in Job. Food defiled daily, that would be Phineas. Rolls boulder nearly to the top, only to have it fall and start over. Liver eaten out, grows back. We got some Greek myth elements there that people should recognize. Oh, that's what those are. Those are cyclical pain elements. There's a supernatural element. Moses gets a staff, Thor's hammer. Jason gets help along the way. Merlin travels with Arthur. Jesus has supernatural powers. What these really are is what we're doing right here. Learning this, figuring out what to do. I got a hurt life. How do I fix it? How do I change the way I feel so that I don't feel that way anymore? Bingo. That's the supernatural aid right there. It isn't supernatural. It's mentally interactive. They're just calling it supernatural. It's how to heal. It's how to forgive. Changing the frequency of emotions from our past called forgiveness. Yeah. There is a struggle to leave the past behind or to get underway. We're going to see something there. Argo crew struggles to leave their women behind. Moses struggling to get away from Pharaoh in Egypt. Sometimes you must get rid of useless, life-taking things. Not always an element in the story, but it's there sometimes. In the voyage of the Argo, they accidentally kill people that they were friendly with. And there's a king that challenged them to a fight, and the fighter from the Argo beats him and kills him. So hits him and kills him. It's like, what? This is crazy. That's before they go through the clashing rocks. Keep that in mind. Jesus kills a fig tree that did not produce. These represent wasteful or unproductive things in our life we need to simplify, also known later on as fastest to the world. Yeah, all the things that you're carrying that are like coming at you and bugging you and doing things like that are a waste, or a tree that's figs. Why would you do that? Here's a tree that's not producing figs. You need to eat something. This is not producing figs. It's not even in season. You have it die. That's a good thing. What you're doing is killing off something that is wasteful for you. It's something that is not productive in your life.
Then we've got a crossing of the first threshold, or actually turning inward to face the memories of the past. There can be two thresholds. If you go to the Argo story, you're going to see Jason cross a river and meet up with Pelias. This represents turning in and facing your earlier self. But they haven't gone through the clashing rocks yet, and the biggest danger is still ahead. This represents the idea that we can turn inward to our memories, but we still have to go into the place that's the deep, dark place that we don't want to go. Defeating the pain cycles and leaving them behind. Yeah, sometimes there's going to be something like the harpies represent the bad memories that return and defiled daily. They can be nullified but cannot be killed. The twins go after them to kill them, but Zeus doesn't allow them. But they stop defiling Phineas's food. So the harpies are still there, but they're no longer effective. This represents the memories are still there, but they're no longer hurting you. It's a common thing. This is the same concept in Sheol, Jewish hell. The bad that goes there are simply rendered null. They are memories that are always there, but cease to act out because they've been healed. Yeah, I remember that happened, but instead of me seething about it anymore, I found out how to let it go. That's what that is. Crossing the severe threshold. That one's hard and dangerous. It isn't the mind. We meet up with our inner self. Okay, I'm not going to keep going on with that. Like I said, the list is not complete, but let's go on.
Oh, Moses was put in a basket at birth and wasn't killed. Okay, there is an element of cyclical pain. Can we go and find something that holds a concept? Oh, we've got 10 plagues. Now, remembering that we have to understand that this story plays out from the mind inward. We need to turn inward. Right now in the beginning, though, we're setting up the reason for the journey. We've got cyclical pain, and there's a small selection of people. Now we're going to struggle to leave the past. Pharaoh says go. God helps him. Then God hardens his heart. What? Pharaoh's changing his mind back and forth. Pharaoh represents our earlier self, and Moses represents our new self, who we want to be. We need to leave the past behind.
Actually, let me be a little bit different with my description on that. Pharaoh and Moses represent our early self together in conflict. And that when we're leaving Pharaoh, we're not actually leaving our early self. We're leaving that early part of ourself that we always conflicted with. That's what's really happening. It's not our early self. It's a facet of our early self. We always knew it was we had to get out. Now it's just time.
But it's a struggle. You can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. Meanwhile, plagues. You're living life going, I've got to do something and it's not working. I'm stuck here. You finally go. The past still chases you, but you're going into the mind. You're going to cross a threshold into some place where it's time to heal. What happens? We cross the Red Sea and we go 40 years into the desert. On the template, this is going to symbolize being in our minds, in the space. What if you went to Joseph Campbell's work, he would call it belly of the whale. I don't like using his material. Stick with mine. I'll keep it plain language. We're in our mind where the memories are, the place you don't like to go. We have to go there to heal. You have to enter in and make friends with the monsters. Okay, so that is where this place is right here. Once you crossed into the threshold and you're in the desert in this case, and you're consuming only limited amounts of spiritual manna, whatever. It's like, now I've gotten away from all that stuff. I need time to heal. You are early version of fasting is to the world. You've gotten away from everything, and now you're eating only what you need to heal and to have a different life. And at this point, all I can suggest is that if you look at them metaphorically in this manner, regardless of how you feel about that, you're going to find some consistency. If you can't look at it metaphorically that way, it's not going to work. This are the sequences of things that are on the template, that are conceptual parts of the story. You read plagues and go, what is that? Those are plagues. That is holding cyclical pain. That's the concept. Those are the things we're looking for. Now that we know the template, we go look at the story and go, there's something in there that represents this. So I've got it reverse engineered, and I'm totally cheating at this point. Okay, let's go to it. One example would be this, and you have to have a little bit more diversity in the background. If you've only read the Bible, you're not going to know this stuff. You have to read a lot of different material. This is a big picture. If you know Jason and the Argonauts, the first thing that is known is that Jason must sail to the far side of the earth and get the golden fleece in order to rule his kingdom. This represents, on the template, you must go to the far side of the start of your life, that's your earth, and gather what was there in the begin with in order to rule your kingdom, which is your mind, in order to have your life back. If we go to Jesus, we're going to find something in the Bible that says to be as a child, and we're going to see specifically where it's left as a child 7 days old in the Gospel of Thomas. 7 days is that's where we start off in the Garden of Eden. So what that means as far as the template is concerned, if we're following the Greek myth and I'm Jason, my consciousness, and I'm going to destroy Pelias, which represents my earlier self, in order to go back, and I have to get the golden fleece at the far side, represents my earliest. This was before I became Pelias to begin with. I'm going back before then. The story isn't hold that way. You have to know it's playing out up here, and these characters are facets of you in your life, and parts of you at different times, and held in a mental hierarchy. It gets thick. Okay. Now, you go to Jesus, and Adam and Eve are us. We are living life experiences, and at some point in time, we go on an inner journey, and Jesus is telling us things like to find the kingdom of heaven within as a child. And if we go to the Gospel of Thomas, it'll even say as a child 7 days old. 7 days is the start of that 3-7 grid. 7 days. That's when Adam and Eve were naked and unashamed and in the Garden of Eden. So, day 7, pure place in your life in the beginning. Golden fleece, pure place in your life in the beginning. See how hard it is to see that. You have to interpret them in one very specific way, and then it works consistently like that. All of them are different analogs in somebody's different time and place in their incredibly intelligent way of nesting. You know what? It's not nested. I use that term. That makes it sound like there was a story and then something was put inside of it. That's not true. There was a template and the story emerged from it. Yeah. The story is the carrier case. The template is what is inside the package. But only because mentally and verbally, the package is built off of the template. And I will post the template down below. I'll keep it as succinct as possible, but also know that as much as I think I have a significant amount of it completed, that there's still going to be elements in there. It's so big that I know I don't understand everything in it. And when it comes to certain things, like when it comes to Greek, I'm going to talk about a little bit of Greek myth right here as I compare some Genesis material, Adam and Eve, with Greek myth and Prometheus and giving fire to the humans. And I can assure you I have studied Genesis extensively, really deep. However, the Greek myth I'm fairly shallow on. What I want to be able to see there is concepts, and I'm just going to show you the big parts. Okay, here's what we have. Again, the story plays out in the psyche. If we do it that way, that is an absolute 100% necessary component. It will not work if you're trying to look outward with it as something that is physical or metaphorical about the physical world. It is all to be played out in the mind. It will not work and be consistent anywhere else. And not one of it means what it says. We have to shift their verbiage into what it means up here and keep it in a mental hierarchy. What we have going on right here in this story is where Prometheus gives fire to humans. Zeus doesn't like that. Humans at this point are primitive. There's a couple of different examples. I'm going to hit some high points and just kind of glaze over it, honestly. But, okay, so humans are primitive. We look at this and go, what is this? If this is playing out in me, who are those humans? This is starting out in life. What happens if we're in the Garden of Eden? We are naked, unashamed in the garden. We have not had first sin yet. We're primitive. That's not what it's called. We're naked, unashamed in the garden, uncovered. Here we are primitive. We have not yet experienced life. Those begin to come online, but only if you say, these are parts of my psyche. the only way you can see that happen like that. All right, so what happens then? In the story with Prometheus, he gives fire to the humans, which allows them to advance. Sounds like a good thing. Zeus doesn't like it, punishes him. There's this cyclical repeat of something going on. But what happens is that during the punishment phase, Zeus takes Prometheus, who disobeyed him, and spikes him to a rock on an island, and his liver gets eaten out by an eagle, and it's painful, but it grows back, and the eagle comes back and eats it out again, and it grows back. And that pain cycle is happening right there. So what you look at that right there and realize there's some elements. You see a pain cycle in there. You also see this advancement from a primitive to something else. But it doesn't sound the same, and here's a gotcha. They're going to shift perspectives. So while Adam and Eve might be being told from a third-person perspective, this one is being told third person as well, except that they're kind of on the side of advancement, which means where Prometheus giving fire to humans, primitive humans, is the same point where the serpent tempted Eve and she partook of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's because both of them, when they translate, I'm Eve, that's my inner self. The serpent represents life experiences, and now that I'm having life experiences, I'm losing this childhood joy that I've had. If I go to the Greek myth, I go, I am the humans. I have now been given fire by Prometheus, and now I am going to advance. But as a result, there's a part of me, these continue to be parts of me, that is going to continue to have this cyclical pain that is an element within the story now. We go right over to Genesis after first sin. What do we have for cyclical pain? From the inner being, the female. You know that one, right? The repetitive pain in childbirth. You will have repetitive pain in childbirth. That's analogous for the idea that every time you have offspring from what you have accumulated that is derogatory based on life experiences, it's going to hurt and be painful. Now, if we're looking at the Greek myth, we're doing the same thing. We're living on life and having those cyclical pain experiences, but it only works if you play it out up here and understand that those are hierarchical parts of you. It takes a while to get there. I honestly find cyclical pain elements are pretty easy to spot if you're going through the template. If it contains the cyclical pain. Sometimes it doesn't have it repeated. They hide it in different ways. But if there's something that's just repeating, that's like, whew, that's a bummer over and over again, that's it right there. And sometimes it's very obscure though, or very simple. A Buddha might have, it's going to be there. It will be there. Look for it. Just don't look for it in a 3-chapter story. Look for it in a verse. If a man thinks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him, like the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. I am the ox drawing the carriage through life, and pain follows me because it's not an evil thought that I've had. It's something that is evil to my existence that I am maintaining up here. Life is unfolding for me in that way. So the cyclical pain is there. We can go to a super duper short one. You have to think this one through mentally to understand this. This is from Lao Tzu, from the Tao Te Ching. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. You got that one right? Caught in hanging on to something, you only see the repeat of it over and over again. Free from desire, you see only the mystery. So they're all held in there. Somebody else might go on for an entire chapter or more about 10 plagues doing the same thing. All right, when interpreting and finding that there is a common level, we should be able to do things like this. I'm going to read this right here from the Buddha. This is one of those side-by-side comparisons between the Buddha and Jesus. Okay, this is very short and easy to think through. This is the first of the dual verses, the very first part of the Dhammapada, Buddha's core teaching. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him as the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. The second part in duality. All that we are is the result of what we have thought.
It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If a man speaks or acts with a pure thought, happiness follows him like a shadow that never leaves him. Okay, what I'm going to suggest, Jesus parallel, and I'll talk through it, is this one. If you come to the altar to leave a gift, and while there you remember that you have aught against your brother, don't leave your gift, set it down. And then go resolve the aught against your brother. Then come back and give your gift. And your Father that sees in secret will reward you in secret. Okay, the way this works is by simple understanding. It is not literal. What does it mean? If I am leaving a gift at the altar, I'm looking for God's good graces. I'm looking for a better life. And while I'm looking for a better life, I remember that I've got issues that I'm dragging with me. Stop looking for a better life and go resolve those first. And then come back, and guess what? That life is automatically going to be okay. What did we have from Buddha? If you had bad issues happen and you continue to maintain bad thoughts, it's going to continue to return. But if you can go and resolve that stuff and get a pure thought, then happiness follows like a shadow that never leaves, or emerges. So, better life, happiness. You see that they're the same once you interpret it all the way down to that level. Interpretation. This isn't template, but interpretation has to be mental like that in all of the material. It's a learned process by going after it and just doing it in your mind. All right, I'm going to pull another example that's a scary one for people. I don't like this one. What I'm going to do is just grab 4 elements because they're very, very closely related between Jesus and King Arthur. Welsh story, more recent times. But it's following the same pattern. There is a called person. Is Jesus called? He's the only Son of God. Is Arthur called? He's the only one that could extract Excalibur. You're going to have supernatural power. On the template, what this represents is knowledge of what to do to change the frequency of the memory. However, in the story, the way it's being held, it looks like you're gaining a supernatural element. Okay, so if we look at Jesus, he comes with supernatural power. If we look at King Arthur, he brings Merlin the magician along with him. So the supernatural power component is met in each story. You also have to select up the qualities before you go. Jason and the Argonauts, again, he's going to grab up all the Argonauts on the Argo before the journey. This represents gathering up all of your qualities before you head off. Jesus gathers up 12 hand-selected disciples. Arthur grabs up his hand-selected Knights of the Round Table. Jesus is instructing us to seek the kingdom of heaven within. It's a destination place. King Arthur is looking for the Holy Grail, which represents a destination place. If those fit on the template, then kingdom of heaven within, Holy Grail, inner peace, heaven, Nirvana, best flow in the Tao, all of them become analogous for the same place. They become destinations, they're all analogs for the idea of a metaphorical destination of inner mental peace. So there's another correlation you can make by seeing story elements that are in there. All right, and because I made the broad-based claim, I'm going to talk about something that's going to be at once probably obscure to many people. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita and Arjuna and Krishna getting ready to go on the battlefield, and Moses in Exodus, and make some comparisons. I've already made that comparison between Moses and Jason and the Argonauts. So let's see if there's parts of it. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is really, it's part of actually a huge body of work, the Mahabharata. And again, I am not skilled with this. If you don't know anything about it, you'll be thinking, oh, this dude knows a lot. If you know Hinduism, you'll go, this dude's a moron. He doesn't know anything. And I know that. Okay, so be aware of that. I am not well versed in Hinduism. I will not pass myself off as an expert, but I see a template in here. That's what I'm looking at. Same with other people's material. I'm going for the template, not your material. Okay. I'm going for the concepts that I see. All right. So if you don't know this, what's happening here is that Arjuna, let me set it up first. So what happens is that Arjuna is,
Him and a couple of his family members are supposed to rule the land, but at first they give it up to family members and relatives to use for a number of years. It's yours to use first. And then at the end of this time, you're supposed to give it back. However, at the end of the time frame, they didn't give it back. They just, nope, we're not giving back the land. I don't recall the time frame. Again, I'm going to be really rough with this. But the basic story is that. So if we play this out in the psyche, I'm Arjuna. And what do I want? I want my land. I want my space up here. Who has it? The people who were given permission to use it to begin with. Okay, so there should, in the examples I'm using, emerge certain common elements. Jason must go defeat Pelias to get his kingdom back. That is going back to defeat your earlier self to get your land. Arjuna must go defeat his family, his earlier family members to get his land back. He must do that. So what happens? He's with Arjuna. Arjuna is in a chariot with Krishna. Krishna is the charioteer. He can drive the chariot. This is very crucial, the way this story works. There's a point where we realize they're going up and down the battlefield, and Arjuna is having this inner struggle. These are my friends. These are my relatives. Should I kill them? Don't they have life? This is representing that struggle to turn inward. He's going up and down the battle line. There's the threshold he needs to cross. It's not the clashing rocks or the Red Sea. It's the battle line. We're looking at the conceptual things here. He's in a chariot with Arjuna in the same way Noah would be in the ark with God. And they're getting ready to cross a threshold, a destruction of the sea or a crossing of a battlefield. Anyway, in this story, what we learn is that he's having this dialogue with Krishna. This is your consciousness and your higher awareness having an inner dialogue. And it's a struggle. You don't want to do it. In the end, one of the things we learn, this is crucial, that Arjuna learns that Krishna cannot do the work for him. He must do it himself. And you have to gather that out of you would have to read it, and there's a point where Krishna is letting him know that I can drive the chariot and be your advisor only. So then you know that the battle that has to be fought fought at the level of conscious. The issues were created at the level of conscious. We don't like dealing with it. We have to learn that the conscious has to go back with the help of the higher awareness to now deal with it again. So that it's difficult. What that means is that the consciousness cannot just turn it over, that you must go address it. You can't just say, here, higher awareness, higher something, take over. You must do it. So that's a crucial thing. In the end, what we have in this story, I'm just going to end up in one short place where in despair, he doesn't go. What we had happen right there, if we were to look at Exodus, we have Moses going up on the burning on the mountain and talking to God at the burning bush. It's a hallowed place. They're not crossing the threshold yet. It's a slightly different sequence. Before you cross the threshold, there's some things that can change in sequence. Some things have to be in sequence. Not everything does. All of the elements are not always there. That person isolated out as a child is not always there, for example. In many cases, like for biblical stuff, it just says, so-and-so, a man righteous before God. And that's it right there. That's as deep as it goes. So it doesn't continually pull out the infant and isolate. That happens sporadically, but it doesn't happen in all stories. It doesn't have to tell you that. All that means is that not very many people are going to do this. That can be held in different language that is still cryptic. While many are called, few are chosen. Many people carry the material, few open it up. Many people carry the ark, few look inside. So you see, in a shift of metaphors, you can continue to say things that sound different but mean the same thing. I have bats in my belfry. My elevator doesn't make it to the highest floor. Yeah, those are different analogs that mean the same thing, and that's exactly what they're doing. As goofy as it sounds, except that it is specifically for spiritual healing. That's where it fits. They become mentally interactive steps.
Let me try to fly this as a language analogy. I just thought of this recently, and I'm not quite sure how it works. It's not quite at the depth of mental, but it's kind of the depth of language. Let's say I was talking to you, and normally I might say, "How are you doing today?" And you might reply with, "Boy, I got a bunch of stuff to take care of by the end of the day, or tomorrow I'm in big trouble." And if we were talking in a different kind of a lingo, let's just shift that into something that might be a Jesus sort of a shift of analogs, and I might say something like, "So what grows from your garden today?" And you might say, "Oh, I've got a pile of thistles emerging. I've got to get those weeded by evening, or tomorrow the garden might be shot." What we just did right there is exactly what they're doing, except,
You know, honestly, this is where it just becomes so difficult and so obscure. You have to do it on your own. I can sit here and say this, and some people just think you sound like a freaking nut. And I get that.
I can tell you that what happens over a time is that it's really a brain wiring thing to do this. It's not just research and study. It's learning how to read it. That it is all analogous verbiage. So as you're reading it, you have to translate it. Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do to be poor? So you learn it's a spiritual verse, and that kingdom of God really means a good sense of well-being. This is a good place to live. And when we're early on in life, we are devoid of those things. We are poor of spirit. Spirit is what we live through. But as life goes on and we develop a lot of things, we become full and we live through those things. And we are not living in the kingdom of God. So blessed are the poor, getting rid of that stuff. For yours is the kingdom of God, for you have a good life. At some point, you're reading those and you are not having to slow down to make those translations. You're reading them and going, "Oh, blessed are me when I am devoid of these things, for I have a good life. Blessed am I when I mourn. Blessed am I when I turn inward and resolve these issues instead of running away from these issues." That they begin to unfold when you read them that way. It's really like starting with a short verse and reading through them that way until you just go, "Okay, I see what they're doing." It's a mental word shift, really what it is. And then translating it to the psyche, and to then growing it into the big stories.
Okay, you have to understand again the conceptual nature of it. This is where it becomes difficult again, and the way you look at this material is incredibly crucial. Because maybe when somebody points it out to you and we look at it in a certain way, you would see the correlation from the idea that the Moses and the Israelites crossed the Red Sea, and then they spent 40 years in the desert. That Jesus crossed a baptismal and then spent 40 days in the desert. The 40 should key us right there. The water crossing is a little more difficult. They're both threshold crossings held in different ways. So that is why it becomes difficult to see, because we don't understand the analogous nature of the verbiage. When you do and you look at that, the more you read it, the more you start seeing the similarities. You go, "Okay, man, I know what they're doing. An anchored ship cannot sail means a dog in the yard can't escape. I got it now. All right." Except it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The destruction of my world to start over again is the same thing as you sequence along as the destruction of Jericho. Now it's time to move along again. The destruction of Sodom, and it's time to move along again. These represent parts of us, and they're held in ways that are very weird. We have to extract them. You get into Genesis and go, "Boy, this is just, man, there's so much sexual promiscuity in here. Promiscuity. Are you serious?" Yeah, it's there, but it's held in a way that is just the most bizarre thing. And it's here too, and it's not held in that bizarre way. But, okay, what else can we think of here? You know, it may be an example or so. There's a point where you realize, okay, these are the steps in the template. I'm looking for this really old story that's 3,500 years ago that I can't even connect with, is somehow holding cause and effect in the seeds that are growing plants that grow more seeds that grow more plants of the same kind. We're looking for those common elements that are going to show up in verbiage in cryptic ways.
All of it needs to be interpreted. That is a difficult transition, and it's slow to get there. I would recommend, if you knew that that was in place and you knew that template was there, to practice with one thing first until you were very familiar with it, and then go to other places and see how a different philosopher later on is putting it in a different analogous manner for their people and their time. They're teaching the same thing, they're providing the same opportunity, but it's not going to carry unless it's in a certain way for the people. What we're looking for is obscure. Okay, George, so if you take that list, or anybody else, if you take that list I'm going to post below, and you start going through the material and you realize, okay, we're going to be looking for a called person, we're going to be looking for cause and effect and things like that. If I was to go to the book of Enoch and started reading it, the first thing that I would see here is the words of the blessing of Enoch, with which he blessed the elect and the righteous, who will be living in the day of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless people are to be removed from the earth. And he began his story saying, I am Enoch, a righteous man, whose eyes were opened by God, and who saw the vision of the Holy One in heaven, and which the angel showed me, and I heard everything from them, and I saw and understood, but it was not for this generation to know, but for a remote one which is to come. So we know what to do, but we're going to do it later. We're not prepared. Now it's time to begin the journey. As I began my story concerning the elect, I said the Holy Great One will come out from his dwelling. Okay, we have a calling going on right here. If you continue to read on, you're going to find that there is, what do we have? Foliage. See how they wither and shed their leaves. Come in summer, how they come and go. There's cause and effect. There's going to be a number of things happening here. And then it starts off into, there's a time for it to, for the purging to begin. Time for us to turn inward. Listen to this. We've been doing the flood story in Genesis. Listen to this one. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born to them beautiful and fair daughters. And the angels, the sons of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men, and have children with them. And Samjaza, who was their leader, said to them, I fear you will not agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of this great sin. Samjaza is going to represent the life experience. Samjaza is going to emerge as somebody that's going to have to be destroyed later. But as you go through, those are the elements you're looking for. You look at the list, you understand that this stuff is incredibly old, and what they're doing is very Greek to us to begin with. They're trying to hook into it in so many ways that are foreign to us that it just really becomes incredibly difficult. I think we've come really far from this. But I do want to end this up. It got long. I tried to explain a lot of, we're looking at those big conceptual things. You're looking for those blocks to begin with. But then as you start narrowing into it, or zeroing in, you find stuff that don't sound alike, but you realize that they're there. Like you're looking for that cyclical pain, and you're like, I don't see a wheel turning. Well, do you see pain in childbirth? Do you see that what you hang on to continues to emerge over and over again? Do you see that the manner in which you judge something will be judged likewise back to you? Those are cause and effect, but they're also, the cause and effect is the reason that we have cyclical pain. That because of something happened one time and we're holding it that way, it's going to continue to emerge over and over again. This is a self-healing path at the core. It's so hard to hook into the simplicity of it, and also how starkly difficult it is to consider the idea of going after your own inner memories. Okay, so at some point, as we're going into it, we're trying to figure out what, this is really old. This was meant for us. Yep, these are my gurus, both of them. In this case, if I'm reading it, I am Enoch, the called one, and Samjaza represents my older self. And this one, in the Enuma Elish, which is much older, I am Marduk, the called person, and Mumu is the original self that needs to be destroyed. If you read through them, you will, and look back and step back and look at them conceptually, you will see those steps continually emerging through there in that sequence. But they're different in different places, and they can sound so radically different. Pain in childbirth repetitively does not sound like 10 plagues. It doesn't sound like Buddha's If you have had an evil thought, pain follows, like the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. It doesn't sound like Lao Tzu saying that whatever you grasp, you continue to see the manifestation of. They all sound different, but if you work them out, and they're all mental processes, they're going to get you to the same place, that whatever you mentally have judged, whatever you have decided the nature of this memory of is the creation of it, and the emotional state of it is going to continue to exist. They're representing cyclical pain. Then, metaphorically, they look the same. But you have to make that mental transition to get there. It's so hard at first. It took a long time. It took a lot of that just analogous sort of thinking and, shifting terms. Hello, what grows in your garden today? There we have it. Yeah, that kind of stuff. We have to learn to talk in a way that we're shifting words that means something different. All right. That is what they did. They were good at it, apparently. All right, hope it was helpful. See you in the next video.